Hi, so my name is Brian Phelan, and this is going to be my poetry anthology for the year of 2017 for Mrs. Bulla's English 12 AP class. So I'm going to go through, rather than just explain all these poems holistically, why I picked them, I'm going to go through each poem and explain why I picked it to add in here. Um, with the ones I made myself, there wasn't really much of a picking that went on, more so than a taking the ones I already had and then adding one. So the one you see on the screen right now is the one I added, and I just wrote it, and so I feel like I'm going to read that one first, and then the other three are ones from throughout the year that I've written, and then the last two, and actually there are two up here, but I'm going to read another. The last two are stuff I've read throughout the year, stuff that's not mine, but I really like, has some meaning to me, and significance, and I also have another one right in front of me that I will read. That is when the time comes. So the first four I will be reading are originals, and so let's get to it. So the first one I have written is called Thoughts, and I'll just read it now. Thoughts. They say that he is perfect. They say that he is set. They say that he does not need help. They say that he is smart. They say that he is better than others. They say that he can't do anything wrong. They say that he must never have problems. He is perfect. He is not perfect. He does not know if he is set. He needs help too. He is not smart but works hard. He would give anything to be others. He knows how wrong he can be. He does indeed have problems. They say, I wish I could be him. He says, I wish I could be them. This poem really is mostly just, I wrote it actually just a few minutes ago before I made this recording, and I'm not going to say that this is how I feel all the time. It's not. It's just sometimes I feel that this section right here is very true. I feel like a lot of people think I have a very easy time with school, and I don't. It's not easy for me. It doesn't come easy. I have to work at it a lot, and so this section here is kind of how I feel sometimes. Every now and again, people get their time of year that it's just everything comes in at once, and you can't really deal with it too well. And this is my time. This is how I feel. Everyone thinks I'm the greatest, but I'm really not. And so I work on that with myself. I don't feel that way all the time. Most of the time, I'm happy-go-lucky kind of guy. But then this last part right here is the whole summary of it. The idea that they see achievements, and other people think, wow, what I wouldn't give to be that guy. But in the midst of those achievements, you don't really know what the person's going through below them. So you really shouldn't say that you'd wish to be that person before you know how they're feeling about themselves. So anyway, so that's the reason I picked this one. Not really picked, but the reason I wrote this one anyway. Next one is, I call it Cool Thoughts. All my originals have stuff to do with thought, so I just decided to carry that through as a theme. And Cool Thoughts. And alternatively winter, you could call it. And this one I'll explain at the end, but here we go. It was cold. In fact, it was dreadfully cold. There was ice all around, a barren wasteland. No hint of warmth. It looked as if it had been this way forever. There was no way to turn, no way to escape it. The cold was biting and painful. It seemed to corrode everything it touched. And it did not help that it was cold outside as well. So, this one, again, is kind of a depressing one. Again, I tend to write this way, because I feel like that's one of the easiest emotions to convey is deep sadness or other deep emotions. Extremes are always easier to convey than just regular everyday emotions. So here, essentially what's going on until the last line is that seemingly a winter scene is being described. Some very barren wasteland. You almost picture like how the country of Russia is. Something that's extremely cold and very, very, very painful. To be quite honest, frostbite hurts. It's bad, and that's something induced by the cold. So that's you get this imagery of this very, very cold scene, and then the whole purpose of the poem is switched around with the last line, where you think that it's just describing this setting, this outdoor natural setting, when it in fact is not. It's actually describing, or at least the intention of the poem is that it's actually describing someone's feelings, and it was actually cold outside as well, is a phrase that is outside the body, and so it was cold inside the body, meaning, this person's emotions were cold, and there was no hint of warmth. It was dreadfully cold. It had looked that way forever. There was no way to escape it. It was biting and painful. So, though it seemingly is this winter scene, it actually is describing feelings, and then it just I go on to say, and it did not help that it was cold outside as well. Just to compound the idea that it actually is emotions, and it is cold outside. So I wrote this in the midst of the poetry projects, because of one of the prompts, I believe. I wrote this one, and I felt it's just a funny kind of turn right here, and I like that. I like when you think a story, or a story is going one way, and then in the last sentence, last paragraph, last page, last chapter, the reader, the writer just completely changes it on you. And so that's what I tried to do here, albeit not as successfully as some of the more famous writers, but I tried my best. So there you have it. That's this one, Cool Thoughts or Winter. And so I'll go to the next one. This one's a lot more lighthearted than the previous two. The previous two were much, much more heavy and on deep emotions, but this one's just kind of airy and fun. And here we go. Some thoughts. I used to sometimes think about thinking, and in fact, it occurred to me that in doing so I was thinking. In fact, in thinking about thinking, I thought. And so even though many people think, there are a few who think about thinking. Because if you think about it, thinking about thinking is just a way of thinking about thought. That leads you to thinking about this further thinking. In a sense, this kind of thinking is paradoxical. For in thinking about thinking, one thinks, and therefore one has thoughts about the exact same thing they have been thinking about thinking of. The permanency of thinking is palpable. No one can ever stop thinking about thinking about. But this is not this is the thought, right? The fact that thinking is a thought, and that the writing down of these thoughts is this. So, just a fun fun piece that I wrote again during the author projects, and I just thought it was, um, I don't know. I thought I had an idea about making a poem where you just keep repeating the same word over and over again, and then I thought about doing it about thinking, and I thought that was a very cool idea. So I honed it and uh, tweaked some things, and I think it came out pretty nicely. I can read the bottom part of this. That was part of the assignment that I had to explain why. So I'll read this paragraph I have at the bottom. The reason this poem spawned from the poems I read is because it really made me stop and think, and this spawned from that interaction I had with myself. More technically, it is similar to the style of the poet of the poems I read, as his writing was full of sarcasm, and I believe that this is purely what this poem relies on. That I have written, albeit a much more fun and comical way. Whereas in the poems I read, sarcasm was used to exemplify oppression. Here I use it in a lighthearted way, and that's true. This poem really spawned out of reading the poets and it during that project, and I had a really fun time with making this. It was actually very fun, and it took me very little time, but sometimes the things that take you a little less time produce the best things. So I thought that this was a very good one. That's the reason I'm including it, because I think it's lighthearted, and it kind of is. It's in a sense better than the other two. The other two bring it down a little bit in a description of like a depressing situation or a depressing outlook on life, and so this one is just a nice little children's poem, if you will. It doesn't deal with any dark topics or dark ideas, and so I think it's just a very fitting enjoyable poem to read, and it was definitely enjoyable to make. So that's why I included this one. Next one, this was a very, very old one. This was from very far back, and it was a poem that was written off of this poem, Cold-Blooded Creatures, which I read for the Poetry Out Loud competition in the class. And so this was the poem that I created, and so I include it here because it's probably the most technical of all the poems I've written, and I think it's the best, the best, 100% the best rhyming poem I've ever created. So here we are. It was based on these lines: "Man, the egregious egoist, imagines by some mental twist that he alone is sentient." And then I continue. "Gone is his sense of wonder, as he has lost the ability to ponder, for he alone is sentient. He sits alone at his desk all day. He sits at his desk all day, never thinking what animals would say, for he alone is sentient. When we draw conclusions, they come attached to illusions. Still we alone are sentient. Our adherence to fact is imagination lacked, when we alone are sentient. With an open mind we can see how prevalent sense of mind be. Even so, we still believe that we alone are sentient." It's my most technical poem. Reading it again, I just like it more and more, because I think the rhyming, most of the time when I would create poems that rhyme, it's very forced, and you can kind of feel it. But this one, it's cool. I just like how it sounds. I like the fact that it deals with a mature, very cool topic about man's egotistical, egotistical complex of thinking that we are the only ones that can think, uh, and I think that that's very cool how you can r- incorporate rhyming into a poem that's about this very, very deep topic. And so that is limited thought. Uh, well, yeah, that is limited thought, and that's why I picked it. It's my fourth original poem. Now I'm gonna get into the poems that I read and I think are very cool. I have three of those. Two of them are actually songs, and they're both Rush songs. And I just think that they have a very, very poignant uh, message, so that's why I included them. And the other one is actually a poem. So the first two I'll read are one I read in class, and another I was going to read in class, but it did not follow through. So here is Armor and Sword by Rush. So I'll read that. The snakes and arrows a child is heir to are enough to leave 1,000 cuts. We build our defenses a place of safety and leave the darker places unexplored. Sometimes the fortress is too strong or the love is too weak. What should have been our armor becomes a sharp and angry sword. Our better natures seek elevation, a refuge for the coming night. No one gets to their heaven without a fight. We hold beliefs as a consolation, a way to take us out of ourselves, meditation or medication, a comfort or a promised reward. Sometimes the spirit is too strong or the flesh is too weak. Sometimes the need is just so great for the solace we seek. The suit of shining armor becomes a keen and bloody sword. No one gets to their heaven without a fight. A refuge for the coming night, a future of eternal light. No one gets to their heaven without a fight. Confused alarms of struggle and flight. Blood is drained of color by the flashes of artillery light. No one gets to their heaven without a fight. The battle flags are flown at the feet of a god unknown. No one gets to their heaven without a fight. Sometimes the damage is too great or the will is too weak. What should have been our armor becomes a sharp and burning sword. I really, truly find many Rush songs to be holding a very deep message. This is one of the better ones. In addition to the next one, I will recite. But the message here really is that society kind of shapes us to think in a certain way, and we get lulled into this system of doing the same thing over and over again, and so we become weak to societal norms. And so what we see as our armor, as they put it in the song, which is everyone telling us what to do and how to act and how to be, is what will hurt us in the end. Become our keen and bloody sword, our sharp and angry sword, our sharp and burning sword. So what they're trying to say is that you really should be unique, be your own person, because if we grow up and we just perpetuate societal norms, that's when we're going to have an issue with being knocked down by that same concept, by that same, when we can't find our own individuality, that's when society turns from armor to a sword, and it stabs us in the back. So that's what that's the main idea of this song, and I really like it. I think it's very cool. And so I'm going to now read a second Rush lyric called "Good News" first, and this is another good poem. I didn't type it up. I have it right here, so I'm just going to read it. The best we can agree on is it could have been worse. What happened to your old, benevolent universe? You know, the one with stars that revolve around you, beaming down full of promises to bring good news? You used to feel that way, the saddest words you could ever say. But I know you'll remember that day, and the most beautiful words I could ever say. The worst thing about it all is that you've never been right, and I'm still not really sure what started that fight. But I still get this feeling there's more trouble ahead. So never mind the bad news, let's have the good news instead. Some would say that they never fear a thing. Well, I do, and I'm afraid enough for both of us, for me and you. Time, if nothing else, will do its worst, so do me that favor and tell me the good news first. So, I think from a lot of Rush songs, you get this feeling of pessimism they have about society, and this feeling that you know, the man brings us down, and that society pushes the youth into one ordered mass that acts as one. So they try and alleviate some of that tension here, and they kind of remove that pessimistic sensibility from their music in saying that this whole song is to talk about how they want good news. They seek good news, and they want the good news first. Is the title of the song. But you can't always have it that way. Is their argument? That's the intention of everyone. Everyone wants the good news first, but sometimes they can't always. Other people can't always do you that favor and tell you the good news first. And I think that that's a very real idea, a very concrete idea that you can wrap your head around. The fact that it's great to be optimistic. It's great to think that society can get better and everyone can do better, and and you can get the good news first. But you also have to realize and be a realist and think at the same time, things might be bad, and if they're bad, you can't just smile and bear it. You can't just grin and bear it. You have to do something about it. So the first step in fixing a bad situation is not, always getting the good news. The first step in fixing a bad situation is getting the bad news and dealing with it. So I think that's a very important thing that not a lot of people abide by. A lot of people are either very optimistic or very, very pessimistic, and neither is very good. Neither is very good, not whatsoever. It's much, much better to be a balance of both. And not even pessimism, just realism. It's very important to be optimistic, but being optimistic in a realistic sense is the difficult thing. So moving on to my last poem my last poem of all of them, and the last poem of the ones that I felt were well written and I had some significance for me. So this is called To My Mother, and it's by Edgar Allan Poe, and I'll read it now. Because I feel that, in the heavens above, the angels, whispering to one another, can find, among their burning terms of love, none so devotional as that of mother. Therefore, by that dear name I long have called you, you who are more than a mother unto me, and fill my heart of hearts, where death installed you, in setting my Virginia's spirit free. My mother, my own mother, who died early, but was but the mother of myself. But you are the mother to the one I love so dearly, and thus are dearer than the mother I knew, by that infinity with which my wife was dearer to my soul than its soul life. So, this is a different poem, and it would seem that it's hard to relate to because he's not talking about his actual mother. He's talking about the mother of his wife who died, obviously, and but I do. I have a very strong relationship with my mom, and I picked this as my first poem to read in class, and I stand by it as the most important poem I read this year because I, regardless of what, you know, Rush might comment on about society or what I might talk about feeling sad or a whimsical poem or a or a poem about the sentiency of humans. What's more important are the people you have around you, and um, the one I have around me that means so much to me is my mom, and she helps me out through whatever I'm going through, whenever I need help, and regardless of what it may be, schoolwork, emotions, whatever it may be. So I hold my mother very dear, and she's very important to me, and so that's why I picked this. It sounds very sentimental, um, but um, I know this has been done before. Picking a poem because uh, you love your mom, but I really truly do, and I don't think she knows it all the time, but I do think it's very important that she does. So uh, yeah, I appreciate my mom so much, and that's why I picked this poem and put it here. And that's why I felt like I needed 3 poems rather than 2 for these last poems. And so thank you for your time, and this has been my poetry anthology. I hope that you've enjoyed as much as I have, looking through all these poems again and reading them. And I hope I've given an adequate explanation for all the reasons why I have all of these in here. And so, thank you, and have a great day. Ron Phelan signing out.